let's get down to business because we have serious stuff to talk about. The Secretary General is somewhere over the Atlantic. He will be landing back shortly in New York. I expect him to speak to you probably around 5:30 or so. The Security Council stakeout, we will confirm the times, but he will, unless something radically changes, I expect him to be available to you later today, late this afternoon. As you know, the Security Council met last night on Ukraine. Undersecretary General Rosemary DiCarlo briefed the Council, and she told members that the risk of major conflict is real and needs to be prevented at all costs. She recalled that in his statement earlier yesterday, the Secretary General was very clear. He considers the decision by the Russian Federation to recognize the independence of certain areas of Donetsk and Luhansk regions to be a violation of territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine and inconsistent with the principles of the charter of the organization. Ms. DiCarlo said, "We very much regret this decision, which risks having regional and global repercussions." Although we are not in a position to verify numerous claims and allegations made by various actors, she said we're deeply concerned about the reports of civilian casualties targeting the critical civilian infrastructure and ongoing evacuations. In his statement, the Secretary General urged all relevant actors to focus their efforts on ensuring an immediate cessation of hostilities, protection of civilians, civilian infrastructure, and preventing any action and statement that may further escalate the dangerous situation in and around Ukraine, and prioritizing diplomacy to address everything peacefully. Today, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, said she's deeply concerned that any significant escalation in military action creates a heightened risk of serious human rights violations, as well as violations of international humanitarian law. Ms. Bachelet said the UN's Human Rights Office continues to monitor the situation closely from its offices on both sides of the contact line in eastern Ukraine. And obviously, we continue to do what we can on the humanitarian front and remain concerned about the humanitarian situation of civilians. And we reiterate our calls to urgently step up their support to fund the UN's humanitarian response plan in Ukraine, seeking $190 million. As always, our humanitarian operations in Ukraine and elsewhere are guided by internationally recognized principles of humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and operational independence. Two senior appointments to announce today, which are a bit of a job swap. The Secretary General is appointing Parfait Onanga Nyanga of Gabon as his special representative to the African Union and head of the United Nations Office to the African Union. He is succeeding Hannah Serwa Tete of Ghana, to whom the Secretary General expresses his deep gratitude and appreciation for her dedicated service. And Ms. Tete is now being appointed as Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, the post that Mr. Parfait Onanga held. And we also thank Parfait for his service in that post as Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa. Both of our esteemed colleagues have been in their current position since 2019 and we have more biographical details on the web and an email sent to you. Earlier this morning, the Security Council met to discuss the situation in the Central African Republic. Council members heard from the Secretary General's Special Representative, Mankeur Ndiaye. Progress to peace and security in the Central African Republic is ongoing, although with continued and very present challenges, he said. Despite the declaration of unilateral ceasefire, the security situation remains preoccupying. Mr. Ndiaye also condemned the repeated violations of human rights and international humanitarian law by all parties to the conflict. These have been committed by armed groups, government forces, and other security services. However, he noted the positive efforts by the government towards the operationalization of the Truth, Justice, Reconciliation, and Repatriation Commission. Mr. Ndiaye also deplored the disinformation campaign, which aims to hurt relations between the government, the people, and the UN's peacekeeping mission. This disinformation campaign encourages hostile behavior towards the UN personnel by individuals and security forces. And on that note, our colleagues in the peacekeeping mission in Central African Republic reported late yesterday that they are in touch with the government to secure the release of 4 of our close protection officers who were arrested yesterday outside of Bangui Airport. The 4 are responsible for the security of the mission's military chief of staff. They were detained after they accompanied General Stephane Marchenoir to the airport as he was getting on a plane. The mission is in contact with the highest authorities in the country to secure their release. They, of course, condemn this, again, another disinformation campaign around this incident, which is underway on social media in an effort to continuing to manipulate the popular sentiment. Moving to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Jean-Pierre Lacroix has stepped in for the Secretary General and representing him on the trip that he was supposed to take. He is in the DRC today. In Bunia, Mr. Lacroix met with the Minister of Defense of the DRC, Gilbert Kabanda, and local authorities in Ituri. He also visited Roe, a site where more than 60,000 displaced men, women, and children live under the protection of United Nations peacekeepers. Mr. Lacroix stressed the need to provide security for the displaced following attacks in the region by the Codeco militia group, while also ensuring humanitarian access and working on community reconciliation. Mr. Lacroix reiterated that attacks against displaced people are unacceptable and called for the authorities to thoroughly investigate these grave incidents. Later today, he is expected to be in Goma to meet with the military governor of North Kivu. He will then head to Kinshasa to participate in the summit of the Regional Oversight Mechanism of the Addis Ababa Process, Security and Cooperation Framework for the DRC and the region, and that will take place on Thursday. Quick COVID update. A note from South Sudan, where we are marking the 2-year anniversary of the formation of the revitalized Transitional Government of National Unity, which was an important step in the peace process. Our peacekeeping mission there is calling for a fresh push to fully implement the peace deal, including finalizing transitional security arrangements and passing new legislation to support constitution making and elections. While the permanent ceasefire continues to largely hold, intercommunal conflict has surged in parts of the country. The mission continues to support the government in its primary responsibility to protect civilians and is responding to conflict hotspots, including through the deployment of 116 temporary operating bases in the last year. And as I mentioned, quick COVID update on Cambodia, where our resident coordinator, Pauline Temesis, continues to lead the team, which is supporting the national COVID-19 response. The team is also working with partners to support socioeconomic recovery, including activities to increase the number of young people entering the labor market. It also provided support to 1,518 micro, small, medium enterprises in transitioning to e-commerce platforms and supported initiatives to protect the livelihoods of 6,500 people, almost half of whom are women. The team has also supported 2,139 smallholder farmers in 5 provinces, providing them access to agri-tech platforms that increase trade in agricultural commodities, provided access to inputs, finance, and market information, as well as better communication and coordination among supply chains. On COVID-19 vaccination, nearly 90% of Cambodians have been fully vaccinated to date, including 1.7 million children over the age of 12. Through COVAX and other initiatives, Cambodia has received 46 million doses of those wonderful COVID vaccines. Ms. Lederer.
Thank you very much, Steph. Today, the President of Russia asked the international community to recognize Crimea as part of Russia. Does the Secretary General have a reaction?
The Secretary General's position today is the same as it was yesterday and previously, which is we believe in the territorial integrity of Ukraine through its internationally recognized borders, as laid out by relevant General Assembly resolutions.
And just a clarification on his appearance before us. Will he be taking questions or will he be making a statement?
He will definitely be making a statement, and we very much hope that he will also take your questions.
A second
so I don't
question.
have to take them.
A second question on Libya. The current Prime Minister, Abdul Dbeibeh, has warned that the appointment of a new transitional government could set off war and chaos in the country. Can you tell us what Stephane Williams is doing, what the Secretary General's reaction is to this?
Stephane Williams is continuing her consultations with internal Libyan parties as well as other key outside interlocutors. I think she was in Tunis last night, meeting with some ambassadors. Our message is the same, is for Libyan leaders to take decisions through consensus, established framework, and also keep in mind the best interest of the Libyan people, especially those who took the courageous steps of registering to vote. Benno, and then Celia.
Thank you. You already mentioned it, SG said in a rare move that Russian actions were in breach of the UN Charter. So does he support consequences/sanctions against Russia?
Look, what the Secretary General supports is dialogue, diplomacy. What he supports is for everyone to respect the Charter. We've seen that there are still planned talks between the United States and the Russian Federation, hopefully later this week in Geneva. We hope those go ahead. We think it is important that all key interlocutors, through various platforms, whether it's bilateral, whether it's through OSCE or others, take those opportunities in a way, find a way to de-escalate.
Then I have a second question. There are concerns about a big flow of refugees from Ukraine if there's an invasion happening. Do you share that concern? Do you even maybe have some estimates or so?
I don't have any estimates. Well, obviously, I think, as we've said, an open military conflict would be catastrophic with all that entails. Madame.
Merci, Steph. Maybe I did not hear you well, but are the French...
Yeah, your microphone. I want to hear you well.
Yeah, okay. Are the French soldiers free or not free?
No. So first of all, they carry UN IDs,
yes.
right? Okay. They are not free. They remain in detention at in the custody of the gendarmerie in Bangui, the Central African Gendarmerie. The force commander, the deputy SRSG were received by the President of the Republic in order to deal with this issue, and everyone is trying to unwind this so we see the release of the four as quickly as possible.
I have another question. Yep. In light of what is happening right now in Mali with the French leaving soon, and in the light of what is happening in CAR, in Central African Republic, do you think that the UN missions, do you think that the security of the mission is at risk, or what is going on with the mission? Will they be
I think it's
able
two
to
different.
do the
Let's
job?
look at it two different. I mean, obviously, you could see some trends, but I think we need to look at it differently. Central African Republic and Mali, they're two different situations. Central African Republic, I think Moncur Ndiaye was very clear as to the risk of the disinformation campaign, notably on social media, that we've seen against the UN mission, implying that the UN mission is there to attack the sovereignty of the state. Those things pose real or clear and present danger for peacekeepers and for the UN, because it misinterprets what we're here in Central African to do under the mandate of a Security Council, as part to help the people of Central African Republic regain peace, to protect civilians, to create an atmosphere that is conducive to political reconciliation. In Mali, we also face a set of challenges. Whether it was the military coup, obviously the departure of a certain number of French forces may have an operational impact on what we do. That being said, we are staying and delivering and continuing to implement our mandate. Again, trying to help a political process to protect civilians, often at great cost. We know a large number of our peacekeeping colleagues have paid the ultimate price in the implementation of that mandate. Ibtisam, and then we'll go.
Hi, Stephane. I have several questions. First, yesterday, the U.S. Ambassador Thomas Greenfield said that the Minsk Agreement has been torn to shreds. Do you believe so? Do you think the Minsk Agreement is dead?
I'm not going to do color commentary on all the 17 statements that were made yesterday in the Council. We have said and will continue to believe that there are existing diplomatic frameworks that should be exploited in the best possible sense to bring peace and to de-escalate the situation.
The second question is also concerning Ukraine. I probably pronounced his name wrong because as the Serbian president Vučić, he said when he's talking about the Eastern Ukraine situation, he compared the Eastern Ukraine to Kosovo. He said, now the West is full of respect for international law, and when you ask them about Kosovo, they say they prevented genocide. And when you ask which genocide, they say they prevented a humanitarian catastrophe because people fled from Kosovo. What a humanitarian catastrophe could it be when Kosovo, 1 month after the Kumanovo Agreement, there were more inhabitants than before? What's your comment?
Look, I'm challenged enough to comment on what is happening today. I'm not going to go back a few years. There were differences in the Security Council. I would encourage you to look back at the great records that we keep. I think we have a real and present crisis on our hands that threatens a lot of people in Europe, and what we need to do, and what the Secretary General's appeal is to redouble diplomatic efforts, find ways to de-escalate both in terms of action and in terms of rhetoric.
And the third question is concerning the HQ COVID-19 protocol, because today I discovered there's no stickers here about social distancing. What does that mean?
I've just noticed the theft of stickers.
Yeah, I
don't know.
Do you have any update of the
protocol?
protocol?
I'm kind of concerned that James Bays is not here. Maybe after having, because I know he may have stolen those stickers. So let me find out, and I will get back to you. Ibtisam, and then we'll go to Rosalind.
Thank you, Steph. Back to Ukraine. In his statement, the Secretary General talked about the fact that the Russian step, the recognition, is a violation of the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine and the UN charters. But still, he didn't condemn that step. Why?
Listen, first, I will ask for your patience and to listen what he says this afternoon. The Secretary General's approach here is one that he feels is based on the legal principles that are enshrined in the Charter. It's the Secretary General's role as guardian of the Charter. And I think he could not have been clearer in his position in terms of what he believed were things that were done that are in contravention of the Charter.
I have another question about Jerusalem and Sheikh Jarrah. I asked you last week whether Mr. Tor Winsland visited the families. After a few days later, you talked about that representatives of the UN did visit the families in Sheikh Jarrah. But and most of these representatives were actually from humanitarian organizations, UN organizations. But the issue in Sheikh Jarrah maybe has some humanitarian aspect, but it's a political aspect. And the question is why actually Mr. Tor Winsland never visited the families, if I'm not mistaken, because
let me double check with them, and then I'll get back to you. Ms. Jordan.
Thank you, Steph. This is sort of a complicated question, so bear with me. Given that Russia is a member of the P5 and ostensibly should be more beholden to enforcing the various components of the Charter. Has the Secretary General reached out to President Putin and to President Zelensky and to President Biden, not wait for their phone call, but reached out to them, given the gravity of the situation? Because it would appear that with this changing of borders, it's undermining the post-war security architecture. Has he reached out? Why? Why not?
He's not had contacts directly with the presidents that you mentioned in the last 2 weeks or so. He's been in touch with various other players, including Foreign Minister Lavrov and the Foreign Minister of Ukraine. Every member state that is a member of this organization has signed on to the Charter, and it is the Secretary General's responsibility, I think, to call out when he feels there are things that are being done that do not respect the Charter. But again, you'll have a chance to speak to him this afternoon.
And one quick follow-up, and because you noted that the Secretary General is traveling, what is this building's reaction to Vladimir Putin's winning approval from the upper house of the Russian parliament to basically deploy troops anywhere in the world for any reason at any time? Is that an additional escalation to what we've already seen in eastern Ukraine?
Look, I think we have seen a lot of actions in the last 24 to 48 hours that do not go in the direction that we would like to see, which is de-escalation and restraint. Alan.
Thank you so much, Stephane. I have a follow-up on Minsk Agreements topic. President Putin again said that there are no more Minsk Agreements after Russia recognized Donetsk and Luhansk republics. Do you have any comment on this statement?
I would refer to what I think one of your colleagues asked. I would say that for us, there are diplomatic frameworks that exist, that remain, and that they should be used as an avenue for de-escalation. Stefano and then James Reinl.
Yes, just on the note yesterday of the Secretary General, he used the word incompatible with the Charter. Mm-hmm. Violation, he said before, about the sovereignty of Ukraine, but then he used the word incompatible. Now, is he going to use today the word violation, or there is any different semantic? We know that in diplomacy, a word that changes a lot of things. Incompatible.
You know, it is not in my career interest to move the spotlight from my boss to me. So I think I will ask your indulgence and wait maybe 5 hours and see what words he decides to use. Mr. Reinl.
Yeah, thank you, Stefan. It's the same subject. The SG can condemn, say he's concerned, he can make public statements. Are there any powers that he can exercise over a violation of the Charter?
You and I can both read the Charter, and I think the powers of the Secretary Generalship as designed by the founders of this organization are limited. Let's be honest, and that's why I think his words, his good offices, which are not in the Charter but have been developed over the last decades by previous secretaries, are also a critically important tool. I'm going to go to the screen, and then I'll come back to you. Oscar, and then Abdelhamid.
Yes, thank you, Stefan. The continued failure of diplomatic dialogues and the military maneuvers in the Ukrainian deterioration crisis, it's obvious that millions of civilians are in the line of fire. So an effort to find a diplomatic solution to the crisis, does the Secretary General have any intention to appoint a special envoy to intervene, or either himself?
At this point, I have nothing to announce on the appointment of any special envoy or representative. Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Stephane. I have a question, a follow-up question on Mr. Tor Winsland. Stephane, I have followed the work of the peace coordinator in the Middle East, from the first one, Shinmaya Garikhan, to Alvaro de Soto, to Terry Larson, to Robert Siri, to Mladino, all the way to Tor Winsland. I have not seen someone who is invisible. He doesn't show up, he doesn't comment, he doesn't make a statement as much as Mr. Winston. Is he stationed in Jerusalem or is he in Oslo?
Okay, I take it this, all I will tell you, Abdelhamid, is that the Secretary General has full confidence in Mr. Wennesland and the way he's carrying out his mandate. Madame.
Let's go back to Mali for change. I read that to replace the French that are leaving, Chad has agreed or offered to send peacekeepers to the mission. If it's true, do you know how many will be sent?
Well, I did see the press reports, but I think it's two different things. I mean, the French presence, Barkhane, was a bilateral issue between Mali and the French. Separate mandate from the United Nations. Obviously, there was contact given the situation on the ground. So if this would happen from the Chadian perspective, this would be not to replace the French, but to augment and strengthen the mission. Let me check with our peacekeeping colleague on that. Okay, Ms. Kubiak, all yours.